The Institute for Financial Literacy is a collaboration between MoneySense, the National Financial Education Program, and Singapore Polytechnic International. The Institute is the outreach arm of MoneySense. We conduct free and unbiased financial education programs for the public. MoneySense is Singapore's national financial education program, set up in 2003, and is currently overseen by MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, and MOM, Ministry of Manpower. MoneySense aims to help Singaporeans manage their money well and make sound financial decisions on their own. Understanding loans and credit. This is the fourth video in a series of 4. In it, we will focus on options you can take when you have problem debt. Options you can take when you have problem debt. Here are some actions you can take if you have problem debt. List all your debt and key information, especially applicable interest rates, late payment or default charges. Also flag debts that have been served with notices of demand or legal action. Develop a debt action plan. Prioritize repayment of debts which have impending legal action and those with highest interest charges or shortest grace periods before late payment fees are imposed. Stop using credit cards or credit lines for purchases. Revert to cash spending as much as possible. Review your expenses to focus on needs and essentials for the time being. Contact your creditors to inform them you need help to repay your debts and seek options from them. All banks have their own debt repayment schemes and action plans. Decide which one works best for you. To help with your debt repayment plan, here's a worksheet. First, list each individual lender and the total amount owed. Then, calculate the interest payable for each lender. Second, list the legal actions taken against you if you are unable to repay on time, followed by listing the monthly payment amount and the date due. Third, write down the implications of late payment. Lastly, based on the above information, prioritize repayment. Debt Action Plan. Here are the steps on how to prepare a debt action plan. For debts that you can manage on your own, either continue to service them under existing repayment terms or try to negotiate with your creditors for alternatives, such as making a lump sum settlement at a discount or to pay in lower installments. However, for debts that you cannot manage on your own, it is best to look for suitable debt management services. Details of these services will be provided later. Note that if no actions are taken to tackle problem debt, then creditors may demand payments through legal actions, such as bankruptcy. Debt collection process. Here is the typical debt collection process. It usually starts with phone calls and reminder letters. Then, if these prove ineffective, it can escalate to legal actions through the issuance of a letter of demand, writ of summons, and ultimately, an application to make the debtor bankrupt. To avoid this, it is necessary to work out a debt repayment scheme, provided you qualify. We will provide more details of this later. As mentioned earlier, if you are unable to come up with your own debt action plan, it is best to secure the aid of debt management services. This will reduce the chances of your creditors taking legal action against you, including bankruptcy. One option offered by banks in debt management services is through a debt consolidation plan, or DCP. DCP is a debt refinancing program to consolidate all unsecured credit facilities, such as credit cards and some types of unsecured loans, across financial institutions with one participating financial institution. Upon approval by the participating bank, you will be given up to 8 years to repay the consolidated debt. This is done with regular payments from one of your designated bank accounts, usually your salary receiving account. To be eligible for this service, you have to be a Singapore citizen or permanent resident, earn between $20,000 and $120,000 per year, with net personal assets less than $2 million. Have industry-wide unsecured debts with financial institutions in Singapore that exceed 12 times your monthly income. Persons on a debt consolidation plan will not have access to new unsecured credit from non-participating banks until their debt is below 8 times their monthly income, or from participating banks until their debt is below 4 times their monthly income. Not all unsecured loans are available for refinancing under DCP, so speak with your banker to find out more. Other than a debt consolidation plan, those with problem debt can seek help at Credit Counselling Singapore, or CCS, which is a registered charity whose aim is to help people settle their unsecured debt. CCS will assist borrowers to come up with a debt management program to pay off their debts. This is a formal consumer debt restructuring agreement facilitated by CCS with major consumer banks and credit card issuers in Singapore, represented by the Association of Banks in Singapore, ABS. Bankruptcy. You risk being made a bankrupt if you are $15,000 or more in debt and cannot pay. As mentioned earlier, it is possible to avoid bankruptcy by working out a debt repayment scheme with lenders. Debtors with not more than $150,000 in unsecured borrowings qualify for a debt repayment plan under this scheme, which would then mean they would avoid bankruptcy, along with its restrictions and social stigma. If, however, you are actually made a bankrupt, your name and identity card number will be published in the Straits Times newspaper once judgment is made, and a trustee will be appointed to take charge of your assets to sell them in order to pay your creditors. Bankruptcy should be the last resort, and only after all avenues have been exhausted. Being made a bankrupt means a loss of freedom, as bankrupts cannot leave the country without permission from the trustee, whether it is the official assignee or the private trustee in bankruptcy. Impacting your job and career prospects, as employers want to know the state of your financial health before offering some jobs. Having a bad credit score, as bankruptcy is a black mark in your credit history. Being unable to borrow, as credit bureaus report bankruptcy data for up to 5 years after discharge. A lifestyle change, as it will affect your relationships. If you find yourself facing bankruptcy, contact Credit Counselling Singapore to find out if you qualify for its debt management program. If you ever need to borrow, make sure you do so only from licensed moneylenders. Borrowing from illegal or unlicensed moneylenders will compromise your ability to have the law safeguard you and your family's rights and interests. Legal moneylenders are licensed by the Registry of Moneylenders, which is a division of the Insolvency and Public Trustees Office. They must comply with the law, which safeguards the interest of borrowers. This includes placing restrictions on the amount which can be lent, as well as the interest and fees that can be charged. Licensed moneylenders must also provide you with a copy of the loan agreement. Remember that public officers are not allowed to borrow from licensed moneylenders. Unfair or unlawful moneylending practices. If you feel you have been a victim of unfair or unlawful practices by licensed moneylenders, you can file a report with the Registry of Moneylenders. Say no to problem gambling. Gambling is never a good financial decision. It is usually a one-way street. While it may feel like a win occasionally in the short term, over the longer term, and especially with gambling addiction, this is a loss-making proposition. Know the risks and that the odds of winning are never in your favor. For example, the chance of winning Toto is 1 in 14 million. Instead, it is best to manage your finances prudently and avoid gambling. Money spent on gambling can be either better spent on your family or saved. Seek help early if you have a debt problem. Here is a true real-life example of how a problem debt led to disaster. The accused allowed his debts to accumulate over the years. To avoid potentially being sacked due to financial embarrassment disclosures required in his job, he decided that the way to resolve his debt issues was to rob an elderly person. One thing led to another, and he ended up murdering the elderly person and his son. What is the lesson here? Seek help early if you have problem debt and are unable to come up with or stick to your own debt repayment action plan. Make the right decisions. Here are the key takeaways. Repay your debts on time. Develop and stick to a debt action plan to repay your debts. If you need help, approach your bank or Credit Counseling Singapore early to seek advice on repayment plans you can adopt. Take all steps to avoid bankruptcy, as being made a bankrupt could have serious consequences for you, your family, and your career. Never borrow from illegal moneylenders. If you are a public officer, be careful when borrowing. Make sure you are aware of your obligations under financial embarrassment requirements. When in doubt, speak to your supervisor.